So Sherry, maybe we can start with you. What rises to the top maybe as the most troublesome or burdensome symptom or health effect that you've experienced?
Hi, I'm Cheri from Colorado, and my mom was diagnosed with DM, and I was her caregiver until her death. For her, the most troubling was the muscle weakness, which also caused difficulty swallowing and breathing. Um, she was not really capable of functioning well without assistance.
Did she have difficulty walking, lifting things? Could you maybe
Yeah.
describe a little bit for us the ways that the muscle weakness impacted her?
Initially, it started out with just not being able to stand up once sitting,
Mm,
or just a lot of muscle pain in her legs.
mm.
And then she started feeling like she couldn't lift her arms up. And we started noticing that she had very little trunk control. So if she was seated, she would kind of just slouch or slide because she couldn't physically lift her body up to sit upright. And the muscle pain was something that was very debilitating.
How early in her journey did she start experiencing that difficulty being able to stand up? And then how long did it take after that for her to have some of that upper limb, weakness and even trunk weakness as you described?
I would say probably from the time that we started noticing the the muscle weakness, it was about a month or so, 4 weeks by the time we would start to see more progression and having difficulty swallowing or not being able to stand up if she was sitting.
And in terms of, towards the end of her life, what would you describe as being the most difficult in daily life for her?
It was definitely the disability to swallow. When she couldn't swallow anymore, she had the stomach tube, and I think just the overall weakness of her trunk even caused difficulties with the stomach tube not really functioning properly. And she started down a path of having pneumonia
Mm.
because she kept regurgitating from the stomach tube, and ultimately that was what contributed to her death.
If you don't mind describing, thank you so much for being so willing to share your mom's experience. How did she cope with this journey over time, losing functional abilities and even to the point of needing to have feeding support?
It was very difficult. She was a very active woman prior to becoming ill. She also had a very complicated health dynamic because she was also battling ovarian cancer. And so the diagnosis was particularly tricky because she had just finished chemotherapy, and any anytime you do chemotherapy, there's a lot of side effects that go along with it. And so when she started having side effects and reporting the side effects to her doctor, everything was brushed off to and attributed to chemotherapy.
I see.
So it made it much more difficult to actually diagnose what was truly happening, even though she was advocating for herself and saying, this is not a familiar side effect to me. Having done chemotherapy before, I never experienced this. This is different.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Sherry. Eric, I'd like to bring you in on this topic as well. Again, thinking about that wide range of different symptoms and health effects that we saw in those polling questions. Are there kind of one or two of those that you would report as being most troublesome for you?
Good morning, James and Lynn. My name's Eric. I'm from Connecticut, and I'm living with dermatomyositis. So in answer to your question, some of the physical effects that really stood out to me were the muscle weakness, the skin rashes, and the pain involved. So when you are a patient living with all those symptoms, it affects everything you do in life, whether it's brushing teeth, sleeping, going to work. And for me, it even included wearing clothes. So just putting on clothes, trying to buckle a buckle, use a zipper. My skin, every piece of my skin was affected and was extremely painful. So it's those things that I remember most in my worst of times.
You know, you kind of are describing this a little bit as past tense, as you're kind of thinking back to when the worst of times maybe were. Could you put that into a little bit of perspective with us, for us? You know, how long were you experiencing, you know, that worst of time, or is that something that periodically, you know, happens in terms of, you know, kind of waxing or waning or getting better or worse?
Sure, sure. So at the age of 50, I started having some eyelid rash, and it was fairly minor at first, kind of just annoying. I didn't think really too much of it. Maybe it was May, so I had been out in the sun, maybe a little bit too much. I'm very active being outside, but I'm also working a lot too. At the time, I was a full-time police officer. So working, you know, average of 60, 65 hours a week at a bare minimum, outside a lot. So those were, you know, those were some of the tough times as far as um, working, trying to be diagnosed. And it was during COVID, so getting appointments during those times were very difficult as well.
Sure.
So I went through a series of uh, a progression really of where my disease got worse. The heliotrope, you know, on my eyes just about shut my eyes, like some of the pictures you saw earlier with Dr. Lisa.
Yes.
The rash progressed into my chest, shawl rash, etc. So things eventually got worse. And you know, seeing specialists, trying to see specialists between Connecticut. I went to Boston and sought out many different specialists trying to get a true diagnosis. And throughout that time, was in an extreme amount of skin pain, overall pain, nerve pain. So it eventually did get worse, and eventually found some excellent treatment here in Connecticut. And through a lot of the treatments, I eventually got better. It took about a year of where most of the pain and the symptoms have since gone away. And I'm very, very fortunate because I know that doesn't happen to a lot of people.
And you talked about kind of pain. Was this pain that was ever present pain? Was this worse at certain times of the day, or even one day to the next?
There were days when you couldn't sleep because of the pain. There were days when ice baths on top of your whole body would not help. It's so hard to explain. I know there's people on the panel here where I can see they're nodding their heads because they understand. But to explain that to someone who doesn't have it, it's incredible the way that it affects everything. Like truly, the most minor things, putting your hands inside your pocket, was incredibly painful because what it does to your every part of your skin. I was supposed to wear a gun at work, and thankfully I was an administrative guy, so a lot of what I did was in the office, and my work was very patient with me. And while I was inside, and most of my duties were inside, I was relieved from wearing a gun. I didn't have to wear that around the building. I didn't have to wear a police uniform and a police belt. I could wear comfortable clothing to work. And some days I couldn't go to work because of the pain and because of everything that it included as far as the fatigue. The fatigue became very real as well, in addition to the pain where, you know, if you're at a 10 o'clock a.m. staff meeting and you're falling asleep because of the pain, because you didn't sleep the night before,
Right.
it affects every bit of your life. I think the fatigue affects different DM patients differently. And for me, it wasn't necessarily muscle wasn't the huge part of the fatigue part for me. It was just overall not being able to sleep, being completely stressed out, uncomfortable. Part of it was probably working 60 or 70 hours a week on top of that as well. But it's the overall effect. But definitely the way the disease plays on your mind, and what it does to you physically as well, as far as making you tired, being unable to sleep,
Right.
waking up all hours of the night, not being able to properly rest.
Absolutely. Well, Eric, thank you for sharing so much of that. And, we've been talking about a number of symptoms. As Eric said, different symptoms affect different people with dermatomyositis differently. What symptoms have been most troublesome for you? What has that looked like for you?
Hi, I'm Shawna Nielsen, and I'm from Northern California. I have dermatomyositis myself, and I've had it for 25 years. So I've had all of the symptoms. Everybody's talked about, save the calcinosis. My version doesn't have calcinosis.
Okay.
And I've had the top line treatments from a fantastic university, medical center, which is where most people need to go to get this kind of knowledge. It's a rare, rare disease. So finding the knowledgeable medical team is really important. Well, I can manage the rash. It means staying out of the sun. It means special film on your car windows to avoid the sun. I can manage most of the symptoms. What is left years later with good treatment for me is endurance issues. So I don't have the muscle fatigue in the same way. If I do too much, I hurt for sure. But day to day, I don't wake up in pain.
Okay.
But the amount of activity I can do in a day is very limited. So that's the part that's the hardest. I'm probably 60% of a normal person, and I can't travel easily. I need oxygen to travel. So 2 hours is my limit. I can't do altitude, and I can't do long drives. So that means I miss weddings. I miss graduations. I worry about camping with grandkids. Can I save them if they go into the water? It's a lifestyle and social lack that's hard for me. I can do day to day. I can get to the store with a mask because I'm a high risk for all those diseases out there. But I don't get the extra social life on top of it. It's all I can do to manage a family.
Right.
And that's the part that's left with me is, yes, I have some muscle fatigue. I can go upstairs slowly, but then I need to pause. And that makes concerts difficult. If you need stairs to get to the bathroom, you look silly. I can't do it quickly. I grab onto the back of people's seats and scare them so that I can stay stable getting back down to my seat. So it's the lack of ability to access those enjoyment activities that I'm left with over time. And so better treatments, getting us better faster, getting doctors aware of what it is early so we don't decline so steeply. I had 3 years. In the beginning, I was down to 30 steps a day. Now I can walk 2 miles a day, but I can't do hills even with a service dog. And when we retire, 2 miles isn't enough to get to that thing you want to see.
Is there much variation? Like, are there those good days and bad days? And is there any way to predict, those?
To predict it, if you have a graduation to go to, you might have to rest for 3 days to be able to do what's necessary for that event.
Yeah.
If you overdo it one day and you want to get ready for camping, I have to do that 3 days ahead and then rest for 2 days.
I see.
So that I'm able to set up and the amount of equipment I must take, oxygen, BiPAP, shade structures, find a site with electricity to run those things and go to the redwoods where there's no sun. I mean, it's a challenge. I still do them.
Right.
But the payoff is then when I get home, I may have to rest for 4 days to catch up.
Hi, I'm Corene. I live on the central coast of California, and I'm living with amyopathic dermatomyositis. So I like to share that distinction because I don't have the muscle involvement that is very typical with dermatomyositis patients. So I had a little bit of difficulty by filling out that poll, but one of the biggest things that's standing out to me, because I am a graduate student currently, I'm in my first year, and I'm also working, and I'm also trying to balance a social life, being a young adult. That's what I do. So like for me, one of my biggest symptoms that affects my daily life is the pain from arthritis and also the skin involvement. I have skin rash, but it's also really severe skin severity, which to some points will cause me to I have this tug of war between the arthritis and the skin sensitivity. So it challenges me when I'm having to work in front of a computer to write my next discussion forum or attend my next class that's online, and all of these different things that just for most individuals, it would be simple, easy, fine.
Yeah.
And with my specific uniqueness to not having this muscle involvement, and like the fatigue also affects being able to uh, be functional, and the brain fog, especially when I'm writing papers and I have due dates that are due within a week, and I do have like accommodations, but I'm trying to once again always straddle this line that I personally straddle as a dermatomyositis patient, of being too sick for the normal world, but not being sick enough sometimes even for other dermatomyositis patient world.
Mhm.
And it's a hard line to teeter.
Sure.
So
Can you kind of, share an example of time where, you tried to do one of those things? What were you feeling? What were you able to kind of either push through in terms of symptoms? When did that become intolerable?
okay. Yeah. So something that's unique for me is a lot of typically for people with arthritis, like summertime heat is great. But if you have sun sensitivity or skin sensitivity, it's the worst. So sometimes on hotter days, luckily it's foggy where I'm at right now, my skin will start becoming unbearable, and I start having to just lay face down on my bed and hoping that my skin cools down, and then getting up several times from my chair. I've been actually quite amazed that I've been able to sit this long. I'll probably be getting up here in a second, because for me, movement is key. I can never sit longer than 20 minutes at a time at a computer. And so it's like constant disruption. So you have that, you're trying to write a paper, or you're trying to write a form, or you're trying to attend class, or you're trying to make phone calls to work. And
Yeah.
you have to keep getting up, and your attention is taken away. And then you throw the layer of brain fog, you might forget what you were writing, or you might forget what you were saying to an individual for work. Especially since I work mostly remotely, and I also am doing school remotely, because being in person, I can't risk being exposed as much, because I'm on immunosuppressants too, to maintain that arthritis and that skin sensitivity. And so it's like this constant juggle, and it's exhausting. And so you think I would sleep all the time, but instead I am probably with a lot of my colleagues, sleep is kind of a fleeting thing. Like, I do sleep well enough to be functional,
Right.
but there are days after I've written
Yeah.
a paper or I've worked, I have to like lay down or rest for 2 hours
Yeah.
to be able to go on to schoolwork and to go on to class before I can. And sometimes that's even longer. And sometimes I have to keep my camera off during class, because I'm just in so much pain, and it's very visible. And a lot of my friends that are in my classes will know quite instantly if I'm off camera, I'm not having a good day.
Right.
Hi, I'm Lisa Snyderman. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area of California. I've been living with dermatomyositis for 16 years, diagnosed in 2008. Thank you. I appreciate being here today. And my gosh, what a way there, just as my peers and colleagues and friends have described, dermatomyositis affects every part of daily life. It means even when I'm well managing it, I feel like the choices that I have to make are limiting the things that I've decided to do. So, anything, the most recent example for me is that we got a puppy. So this is right after I decided I'm an artist, and I was participating remotely in something really cool, because I can't be there in person because of my dermatomyositis. So I'm explaining it because after I decided to put myself in this position and overextend, because it's such an exciting opportunity, we got a puppy. Now, so what that means is that I flared. And I am just right now, because of the meds that I'm taking and going up on my prednisone, am able to deal with the fact that we added something to my daily life. The puppy meant that I had to bend, remove the pee pad, take the puppy, lift the puppy, take the puppy outside and walk the puppy. This is stamina that I don't have. And so what I was describing it as the most was depletion. I got utterly depleted, and to the point where My husband and I were trying to decide, is it hospital time? Is it, meds, upping the meds? Is it me going back on my infusions? Like, all of those choices that we have to make, so I can say right now, I can sit here and say, yes, my husband has to take care of the house cleaning and the vacuuming and the heavy lifting. He has to do all the food shopping. He has to do the food prep. He has to do all the yard work and all the driving. This is all true.
Yeah.
But for me right now, personally, like what I'm feeling the most is, wow, I was managing this so well. Like from 2020, I felt like, okay, I went off my infusions and decided during COVID that because my risk was so high, that for me, that was like super important to make that decision that I need to manage this condition.
You did mention you overextended. You also used a term, you said you had a flare.
For me, a flare means that I am no longer able to manage my daily life in the way that I would traditionally manage. So say I was on, in my case, 12 milligrams of prednisone. I've been on prednisone for 16 years. That's my mainstay. So at that point, I have to then confer with my doctor and figure out what is the treatment, what happens. Many of us living with DM get sick or have other things happen on top. I have another condition called CVID, which is common variable immune deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So I live with very low antibodies, which means that I'm extremely immune suppressed and also very likely to get infections. So I'm constantly managing multiple diseases. And that, for that, it means that if I flare, I have to figure out what does that look like, right? Like you're asking. In my case, it is mostly muscle weakness, extreme fatigue. So to the point, and then this was my not happy symptom. I went up on prednisone to 20 milligrams, which doesn't seem like that much from like 12. But guess what? For my body to go up, I ended up having insomnia. So the problem was now I'm having additional side effects that are now affecting the ability to even come back. If you don't get sleep, you're not going to be able to function. I mean, I know that, and a lot of my, friends are shaking heads because they know how important sleep is.
How do you calibrate, how much you feel you need to manage or limit those activities?
A great question. So a lot of us are familiar with this term spoons. It basically is a way to manage these energy units by thinking about that you have a limited number of energy units at the beginning of your day, and then you spend them through activities like showering or food prep or going out, right? So for me, it is always choice.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I always think that is what DM has been for me for 16 years.
Wow.
Is every day I have choices to make. And it doesn't mean that I'm not managing my condition or that I don't feel stable. I'm always making choices though. If I want to go out, it means, as Shawna had, spoken to before, we need to prep. Not only like sun gear and water and all those things, we need to think about the fact that if I go out, it means I'm not doing this. It means I have to take this nap, and it means that my choice is I'm going to do one activity. I will go to the store with my husband and sit in the car, or I will, right? Like I have a choice to make.
Right.
That's how I decide every day. And I will also add, like Cece's talking about, like Corene, is talking about, is that the other aspect for me is that I make choices knowing that I might pay for them later, like doing my remote participation.
Right.
I was on a robot, okay? And the whole point was that I was on it for hours at a time. And I intentionally chose that activity knowing that I would have to pay for that differently later.
Wow.
Thanks, James. This is Corene again from California. I just want to highlight something that is the exhaustive part that is internal, is the narrative of you constantly making choices. So part of being a patient is you also have to risk assess what an activity will take away or add to, and also the risk assess of if I interact with those I love or even the general public, will this cause me to get sick? And if I get sick, what will that look like for me? Or if I'm in the sun just a little, maybe 2 minutes too long, will that backtrack me. And it's like a constant thing that we're always anxious about is, will I be a little different even in the afternoon or the next day?
Yeah.
And will this push me back to teetering back to what I was before, or even to a more severe point? And it's exhausting. Like for me, I have the antibody that's related to lung disease. And I am very anxious all the time about being sick, but I have to live. I have to see people I love, because social isolation and loneliness is just as debilitating as some of these physical diseases. This anxiety and depression and the mental turmoil that people and patients and caregivers, those care partners, it's constant. And you are the only one that can advocate for yourself. And you do get looks, you do get asked a why, or have you tried this diet? Have you prayed it away? Have you done all of these different things? And there's often times where I'm just saying, I feel like I'm a failure as a person because I'm sick and I can't control it.
Eric, I'd like to maybe start this topic with you, living life and getting older with this condition. Are there certain worries or fears that you have?
Sure. I think the first one I clicked on was dying early.
Yeah.
When I was first diagnosed at 50, I did some quick Googling and I saw incorrect information, but it said I saw one that said estimate of lifespan after diagnosis is 5 to 7 years. So that was terrifying. I'm 50 years old. I'm working full time. I have a family, and that was truly a concern. And I learned later that was false. That there's people that live with this and go on with maintenance for many years. But I'm also part of a support group in which I see people who have had it for a while and do have worsening symptoms. We've lost a few from our group, some that passed on. So that's always terrifying. So you think about the future in addition to whatever else you're gonna possibly look at. As we get older, we age and we deal with other symptoms. So is this going to make things worse? Certainly, our risks are up there. So you kind of think about everything back and forth, like what was I going to get if I didn't get DM, and now that I have it, it's going to exacerbate anything else that I get in the future. So, kind of a tough reality to know. My life has probably been shortened a little bit by this diagnosis.
Right.
So you kind of appreciate what you have. I am so appreciative of where I am right now, the medications that I've received, the treatment that I've received in order to get me where I am right now. I'm very appreciative. I am, if you didn't know, if you looked at me, you wouldn't know that I have this. And I'm so blessed in that respect.
And something as fundamental as having to think about lifespan, having to worry about years being taken off your life, is that a kind of a general worry that you have, just knowing that kind of the statistics that it does shorten the lifespan, or are there any particular symptoms or health effects that you've been managing that kind of more specifically feed into that worry or concern?
For me, I don't have anything very specific. As I said, I'm one of those that was diagnosed early. I had symptoms and I was diagnosed within 6 months. There are people who go many years without being diagnosed, and it worsens their symptoms. I was diagnosed early, treated early. I am doing very well, so I don't have anything very specific. I worry about, I guess if anything, I worry about maybe some lung involvement.
Sure.
Because my muscles aren't severely affected by it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Cheri, I'd like to also bring you in on this topic. I know with your mother passing away, do you have any reflections on this?
Yes, I feel like in her situation, the symptoms kind of came on quickly and progressed rapidly. And in the grand scheme of things, she did get a diagnosis rather quickly comparatively, but her symptoms were very severe and her body was very depleted very quickly. And so there was kind of a point of just no return. But watching that decline happen so rapidly and her losing the ability to swallow and speak, it resonated with me when I heard the caller say that, you know, as a Hispanic, talking and being with family, and that's who my mom was. She was very, very talkative. She loved talking with her relatives and really anyone who would give her the time. And losing her ability to speak was heartbreaking.
Absolutely. You know, Shawna, we can bring you in on this.
Lots and lots of worries. The burden of our medications and the side effects from those medications is a whole nother worry in itself. One of the top tier treatments for me caused a heart attack. And in your mid 50s, the doctor was very surprised. So yes, worrying about our life, sometimes we don't die of the myositis, we die of the complications. Myositis can go to your heart and cause myocarditis and weakness of the heart. Pulmonary hypertension, which is very life-limiting. That's a lung condition. The side effects are just a huge burden. And so will continuing to take the steroids cause diabetes? Yeah. That might be what works for you, but you risk losing. So I have very fair, thin skin from it. So I tear skin if I just rub my arm.
Right.
Like a 90-year-old, and I'm 60.
Absolutely.
So lots of things that we have to worry about over time. And then what does your family think when you have a heart attack in your 50s? Their belief about you. And I have fabulous support, but it's a burden.
Right. Absolutely. Lise, if we can bring you into this topic as well.
Yes, Shawna has definitely nailed my biggest one, which is I've been on prednisone for 16 years, and I'd like to know, I already have osteoporosis, so I'd like to understand what are my risks for continuing to stay on this drug that is my mainstay. It really does help me. Quality of life issues. So what happens if treatments stop working? Now I'm able to manage it and I'm happy about that. What happens when or if they stop? So there's some anxiety around that. I've been in the hospital before. So like my biggest go-to fear is like, I do not want to go back into the hospital, you know? So like those things of like, can I manage not only with a care partner, but like, can I manage that? And what happens if I have to go into the hospital? Also, as I noted for me, living with multiple diseases. So the coexistence of managing other diseases with this over time. One thing we didn't talk about is every time something goes down in our lives, we always ask, and this is not, I'm speaking for a lot of us because it feels like this happens where we go, is it dermatomyositis or is it something else? And so that continual like question of how DM is going to impact our lives. I don't speak for others, I'm speaking for me. But my last one is if rashes come back. So I've been really good about controlling it. And I would like to, know that I actually had my first flare of a rash since 2011. That just happened with this last flare. And I was mortified because my brain and body were like, no, that is never coming back. And it did. So that is a fear of mine, is like, what if it stays?
Right. So let's maybe start with you, Barbara. Here, maybe what I'd like to focus on are the things that have maybe been the most helpful or most successful.
Thanks, James. I'm Barbara from Chicago, Illinois, and I've had dermatomyositis for about 6 years. In that time, when I kind of came to after the initial flare that I had, or when the disease started, I was completely lost about what to do. And by the time I was finally able to read and get back to myself, I started doing a lot of reading about food as medicine, and tried paleo diet and all this other stuff. I was taking a bunch of medicine too, but I felt like I had lost control over my body. And one of the few things that I could control would be what I ate. So that was a really important thing that I did, I think, in the beginning.
Yeah, and Barbara, that's helpful, and absolutely, we want to hear about this wide range of things that you've done and employed. What were your goals, when kind of initially, modifying your diet and watching, the particulars of what you were eating and consuming? What were your goals, and how have you found that, kind of maybe any trial and error with your diet to more or less, help you achieve those goals?
Yeah, I moved from the paleo diet to the autoimmune protocol diet,
Okay.
which has been tried by a lot of people. And I don't think I had illusions about my goals. It wasn't like, I'm going to be fine now. I
Right.
didn't think that. I just thought, honestly, it was about regaining some sense of agency about this disease, because it's so much. When you first are diagnosed, it's just so much to have to understand. And I kind of felt like I was at the mercy, I don't mean to say it that way, but yeah, kind of at the mercy of all these medical interventions, the really intense medical interventions. And so I wanted to feel like I could do something, like even if it wasn't a cure-all, that
Sure.
I could do something.
Yeah, and how has, now that you've, landed on this current, diet, how has that been working for you? Has there been anything from like a health perspective that you would say it's either, made, certain symptoms a little less, or, again, how do you kind of judge that, and can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, well, you're not supposed to be on these diets forever and ever. You're supposed to do them and then slowly kind of taper.
Hmm.
But I gotta tell you, I love chocolate, and I kind of got addicted to jelly beans this year, and I paid for it like
Mm,
really a lot. So I can tell when I need to kind of get back to cutting out the sugar and doing other things. And in addition to it, I still need all these other meds, but I can tell there is a difference when I kind of, fall off the plan a lot.
yeah, yeah. Every diet involves a little bit of cheating. In this case, it sounds like you might have paid for that a little bit. And just one last question on that: can you just tell us, what was it that happened? Was there certain symptoms
Oh,
that popped back up, or just change?
yeah, yeah. Again, I mean, I have people haven't said this very much, but or a little bit, but my big problem is my voice and swallowing, in
Okay.
particular in my lungs, and pain. And so more trouble talking, more pain
Yeah.
in joints, especially small joints, and more dysphagia. So that's what really kind of came back, and a little bit of a cough now, which really concerns me because I have interstitial lung disease.
And how did you notice that it was coming back? Was there a moment where you realized it was getting worse? Was there either something specific, or if you can tell us a little bit about that?
Well, after I ate an entire small box of jelly beans from Trader Joe's,
Yes.
I pretty much right away knew that was a
Okay.
really dumb thing that I had done, because the symptoms just kind of like were like whammo.
Okay.
So, and then it takes some time to kind of get back. I do notice that when I do fall off the wagon, that I'll feel things pretty much right away.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing all of that, and appreciating you sharing something that has helped for you. Yashira, I'd like to loop you in on this discussion, thinking of things that maybe have been the most successful, most helpful. Again, casting a really wide net here of what we are considering in terms of treatments and management strategies. What comes to mind for you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Yashira. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. Hola a todos. I now live in Pennsylvania. I've been diagnosed with MD5 since 2021. And for me, other than great doctors that finally I found them, it's actually moving, exercising. Like if I don't exercise, I could feel, and when I'm saying exercise, I do yoga, it's stretching.
Okay.
You know, if I don't do that, I feel the stiffness right away in the mornings, my energy. And it's hard because, you know, exercising can be painful. So right now I'm in a much better condition, right? But when I was ill, it hurts. So to really keep on doing that while it's hurting, but seeing the result of that hard work, it's good. You know, it's hard, that balance, but it's what I needed. And I think that's what it keeps me in a good shape right now.
Well, you mentioned that you feel kind of more stiffness when you don't do, you know, yoga and stretching and these exercises. You know, could you kind of describe that? Is that like, you know, full body? You know, are certain muscles or parts of the body more affected by that stiffness? Can you just describe that for us?
Sure. I believe many patients like me have numbness during the night. So that is one thing that I immediately, of course, it happens. Other is when you are just waking up, it's like a robot. You are in slow motion trying to get out of that bed, and you slowly start like feeling all those muscles, you know. And it was hard for my husband to see me getting up of the bed because it's not this young wife anymore. It's just this little old lady.
Wow. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Yashira, for helping us understand that. Ray, we can start with you on this topic. You know, thinking about treatment approaches, again, could be something that's helped or not helped. You know, what are some of the drawbacks that you've experienced?
Hi, I'm Ray. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I've been living with dermatomyositis for about 4.5 years. With treatment, of course, I was started out with high doses of prednisone, and that caused all kinds of other issues for me. I actually ended up on over 100 units of insulin every day.
Wow.
I had lost my vision, and there were no readings on my blood sugar meter. But coming off of that, I have IVIG and Rituxan, which are infusions, and drawbacks there is, you know, just interruption to daily life. I do still work full time, and it's kind of hard, you know, fitting that into the schedule, but it takes precedence because without it, I can't do much else. You know, I can't work full time. And it'd be nice if it could be a nice pill to take. And then, you know, while I'm doing a lot better than I was, you know, the treatments that I am taking are using, it doesn't treat all the symptoms, and it might actually cause some side effects. I'm thinking that some of the brain fog that I'm experiencing is coming from, you know, side effects from some of the drugs that I'm taking. And I also have calcinosis, which I guess none of the drugs I'm taking are helping.
Sure. So maybe we can start with that first. You know, so the calcinosis, has there been anything that you've tried that was intended to treat that and it just hasn't helped, or right now there's just nothing available to you to help with that symptom?
The only thing my dermatologist suggested was to take aspirin. I can say that it's a little helpful, but it's, you know, I still have the calcinosis. I've read that there are some other treatments that you could use, but they haven't been recommended for me.
Sure. And for you, can you just describe the calcinosis and how that's impacting you without a treatment?
Sure. I do have some spots on my arms, but the most troublesome is the one on my thigh. So it's difficult sitting for long periods of time. It causes pain, and I've been told that I could have it removed surgically, but that's not really a route that I want to take because I've had so many, you know, issues with my skin. I'm fearful of what might happen, after that and with healing, and I have keloid skin. So that's where I am with that.
No, that's very helpful to understand, Ray. And then kind of going back to the prednisone experience, clearly you had very significant side effects, and so it sounds like you stopped that altogether. Is that right?
That is correct. I actually, Rituxan was a game changer for me. After I started the Rituxan, and actually, Acthar HP is also another injection that I was taking. I was actually able to wean myself off of the prednisone. I was, like I say, I was on 80 milligrams at one time, and then got down to 2.5 for a while, and now I'm completely off of prednisone.
Okay. And then IVIG, just to kind of close the loop here on some of the things you said, you talked about the burden of needing to, have those infusions, and, how that it's hard to keep up with that, but that it's necessary. If you could just kind of describe, as, on an ongoing basis, it sounds like you're assessing, the benefits you're getting from it relative to the burden of being on it. What does that kind of look like for you right now? What's your assessment of it? How's it helping? And is the burden really worth it to keep up with?
I can say that the IVIG, I know that it helps me with the skin side of the dermatomyositis.
Okay.
I did see improvement after beginning the IVIG. I used to go three days every 4 weeks, but I'm down now to 1 day every 4 weeks, which is helpful. But again, I used to even try to work, remotely during that time. It was difficult because, pre-meds, we take Benadryl, and all I want to do is sleep, after Benadryl. So, like I say, just that interruption to life. But I can say that I'm grateful that it's down to 1 day. But like I said, it'd be nice if I could pop a pill
Right.
and it do the same trick.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ray. Shirley would like to loop you in here as well. Where some things might be helpful, others that might not, but particularly if there's any downsides that you would like to highlight for us. So it's kind of dealer's choice for you on any treatment experience you'd like to share.
Thank you, James. I'm Shirley from Eastern Iowa. I was diagnosed with dermatomyositis 3 years ago with the Anti-Gel 1. And through that, I did take prednisone right off at the beginning, finding out from my current rheumatologist, probably should have been stronger. They only gave me 40 at the beginning, but they were so insistent on tapering me off prednisone because of the side effects prednisone can do to the body. So they were tapering me a little too soon, and I should have stayed on the higher dose early on, because by October of that same year, I lost my ability to walk. And what I found to just kind of keep my strength going was maintaining that protein level.
Okay.
A lot of the time, there was like this little test I did that tell me how much protein I needed. My average was around 64, and they say you need to increase it 50%. So I try to get like 90 milligrams of protein every day. Through all of that, I've developed an intolerance to fructose now. And so what we found, so I take the Protein Max one, and it's got 33 milligrams because it's my best way to get as much protein as possible. And now we found it's got inulin in it, which is a form of sugar, which fructose does not handle very well. So I've since then tried to reduce the amount of Protein Max I'm taking and supplement that with additional protein. But if I do that, I get fatigued. So I've learned to tolerate the side effects of the Protein Max and just keep it at the 90 milligrams, because otherwise the weakness in me just, I just don't feel great that day without it.
Right. And this is, I think, the first time we're kind of hearing about this kind of, protein goal. And so, as you, we're following these recommendations and increasing protein intake, Did that impact how you felt at all? Did that help in any way?
Oh, I can definitely tell right away, probably by noon, if I didn't have it in the morning.
Oh, okay.
So it's the first thing I like to have in the morning. And if I don't have it, yeah, it's very noticeable.
And if you don't have it, is that fatigue? How do you feel?
Drained, tired, just don't have the necessary energy that you want to do during the day. I want to take more naps.
Right.
Outside of the ones I've tried not to take during the day.
Right. Wow. Well, that's very very kind of helpful to hear, and I guess so. You make sure you take have protein first thing in the morning, and that helps a lot. I guess over time, how are you kind of thinking about and assessing whether the current protein levels are really working for you? If you can kind of just describe your thoughts around that.
Yeah, well, I also, so by October of that year, I had lost my ability to walk.
Okay.
And so I go to physical therapy often. And doing the physical therapy, I get extremely exhausted.
Sure.
It does require a rest after it. But if I didn't do the physical therapy as well, I could tell that I just don't have the strength overall as well. I need to maintain it, but I got to push myself harder at physical therapy because I am trying to work on regaining that muscle loss that I had. Because I lost, at least in my shoulders, at least 90% of my muscle. They even measured me to the point that I was at a negative. They measure usually on a scale of 0 to 5. Mine was actually started out at a negative, finally up to a 1. And I attribute a lot of that to the physical therapy and maintaining my protein levels.
I see. Wow. And going from a negative to a 1, what does that translate to in daily life for you?
Well, now I can hold a very lightweight stick above my head, but somebody has to put it there, but at least I can hold it. I can do circles with my arms now. If I was holding something, get my arms out a little bit further.
Yeah.
So it's been very good on that standpoint.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing and helping us understand. Linda, would love to bring you into this conversation as well. Kind of would love to hear your assessment of your current treatment approach.
Hi, I'm Linda in New Jersey, and I was diagnosed in 2016 with antisynthetase syndrome with dermatomyositis and interstitial lung disease. The oxygen is fairly new to me, 2.5 years now, but my dermatomyositis has been refractory, so I haven't had a lot of success as to treatments. IVIG, each time we tried it, we had 5 tries and 5 cases of aseptic meningitis. Rituxan did save my lungs in the very beginning. And then it got off schedule, and then it started to not be as effective and leave me with more side effects than benefit. My one constant has been prednisone. And through this entire time since diagnosis, I've always heard about the side effects, the potential side effects. When I didn't have those side effects, then I was told, well, you will get those side effects. And I don't. And it can be very frustrating knowing IV steroids are, to me, I consider that my treatment.
Right.
And I'm in a flare. It's what stops it and helps me get back to functioning levels. And I understand the reluctance, but for me, that's the thing that at least stops my flares.
Sure. No, thank you for sharing, Linda. So you said that you kind of described your disease as refractory. It sounds like steroids can help with the flares. When you talk about your disease being refractory, can you just maybe describe a little bit about what different symptoms and health effects you're experiencing, which what things are not being able to be addressed for you?
Sure. For me, it's really my muscles. I do have some skin involvement. It's never been severe like I see some people.
Sure.
I do have itching, but my muscles are heavily involved. And we just haven't been able to really find anything that has been able to assist me in getting that back. Physical therapy helps. It certainly helps in learning techniques to manage my balance, things like that.
Right.
But yeah, the weakness and the pain with my muscle involvement, we just haven't really found anything.
And then on top of that, when you have flares, what does a flare look like, and how often are you having those?
For the last probably 5 years, I felt as if I am just in a state of constant flare. It just, whether it's severe, when I start to notice my core getting weak, if my head is getting wobbly, swallowing issues start to happen, that's when I know it's time to go in the hospital.
I see.
So, but the itching, the weakness,
Right.
walking is almost impossible. And then when my arms get hit, when my upper body is hit, I don't have anything to support me. So.
Right, absolutely. Well, Linda, thank you so much for sharing as well. I do want to get to some phone callers that we have. Barbara, I'd like to kick things off with you. Given the context of currently available treatments, what would you be looking for from an ideal future treatment?
An ideal future treatment would be something that treats the major symptoms. It would have to be personalized in a way, because we all have some different ways that it expresses itself differently depending on us as individuals. But I would also like it to be something that doesn't take precious time away from our lives, like having to sit for infusions in the hospital a lot. And to that point, I just wanted to point out that I had a great rheumatologist who was willing to take the risk and give me subcutaneous immune globulin, which I can administer at home. I can watch Netflix and do it. And it has fewer side effects, like less headache, less of that other stuff. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but for me, it's been a lifesaver because I have terrible veins, and the idea of going into the hospital once a month was not very pleasant. But there are other possible ways of dealing with things that I think people should really push for. And we have to push against the insurance merry-go-round, which can be really tiring, but to get some of these things is really quite a task.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Barbara. Linda, I'd like to go to you next on this. We'll come around, and I'm going to go to each of you here on our Zoom panel on this very important question of what would represent an important or ideal treatment for you. Would love to hear your perspective, Linda.
Oh my goodness. That is really hard. Just to stop the ever revolving door of flare, calm down, flare, calm down. I think that, to be stable at a functioning level, for me to be stable, which would then allow me to adjust to whatever that stability level would be.
Sure.
Then I could adjust, as opposed to constantly trying to adjust here and there and
Right.
Oops, I got to catch that one too.
Yes.
So yeah, I think something that would bring stability.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Linda. You much more eloquently described what was the first option in that polling question of stopping disease progression and helped us understand what something like that would actually mean for you. So thank you. Shirley, just coming around here, would like to hear your thoughts. What would represent something meaningful or important to you if from a new treatment?
Yeah, thanks, James. And I'm Shirley from Eastern Iowa. And at the onset of my diagnosis, I was very thankful that my PCP diagnosed it early enough, but then it was extremely difficult to get into a rheumatologist. And by the time I got in there, and then they, put me on, well, I was put on prednisone right away by my PCP. But with the rheumatologist, then it was rituximab and going in and getting that initial treatment. And just I'm in Eastern Iowa, and just the education behind the rheumatologist was a bit weak. So, now I go to a university hospital, teaching hospital, and where they wished that they would have gotten me early on, increased the prednisone, and gotten IVIG treatments right away. I did not actually start IVI treatments until 8 months later.
Right.
And, by then I had lost most of my muscles. So now, treatment wise, I just wish that stuff was known and the doctors knew more about it earlier on, that there were just more knowledge base out there. We have to advocate for ourselves. And I think that's the continuing thing we have to do in continuing for our treatment. Because like, everyone has said, the treatments differ for everybody and not everybody is the same. And so you just got to keep mentioning what new issue you have, because that's one of the things that you find is the new treatments. So or not new treatments, but different treatments that don't work. So just stopping its progression is a big thing. And it's just, knowledge base and what works for everybody.
Absolutely. I hear you loud and clear, accessibility of existing treatments, how they're not helpful if they're not accessible. But I also hear a little bit of a theme of, anything that also might help intervening earlier and stopping that disease progression being really important. Ray, I want to bring you into this discussion. What thoughts do you have on what would represent a important or ideal treatment for you?
An ideal treatment for me would be, I take like a concoction.
Sure.
I have to fill up my pill bottles or my pill packs and everything, and it's a lot. It's a lot taking. I take over 15 pills a day, and twice a day. So something that is one in all, or all in one rather.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I even have trouble I might miss my medications because I dread taking, 15 plus pills.
Right.
So that would be ideal treatment for me.
Wow. Well, thank you, Ray. That very clear goal there, and understood why that's important. Again, treatments.
Well, I want to bring that we all are in a different journey. I don't see how one pill could solve that. Like you say, we all different, but I will be happy to see treatment in different stages. And to bring to Shirley's point, if the doctors know how to diagnose us and the treatment is available, it will make the patient's life easier. I think I cannot, right now, I'm only in rituximab, but when I was early diagnosed, I was like Ray, 30 something pills.
Yeah.
So I think it's unfair for me to ask to science for one pill for everything, but can we just decide why this immune system is acting this way? Maybe that could help us, right? I don't know if that's possible, but maybe if I call my myositis Quasimodo because I looked at like the hunchback before. So if I could control that thing, maybe I could live a normal life. So
Yeah.
hopeful for that.
Well, thank you.